Today's the 22nd of Tammuz, and I believe it's the 28th of July.
No, the yard site tomorrow.
Yeah, the yard site tomorrow. Yeah. 28th. Okay. And we're starting chapter 11. Telephone knows best. Okay. So chapter 11. Tefillah in derech mitzvosecha. Miu adayin kasher lichora. After everything that he's explained, and that we now understand that we need these unifications to describe how Hashem comes into the world. This is the mechanism, it's the process, and it's the same process that we learn from ourselves. Meaning we look at ourselves and then we understand the process in heavens. That's from the verse in Job, "Mibsari chazeloka," from my flesh I understand the godliness, or the godliness. It's still difficult. Because even though within this whole mechanism we say what's inside is the infinite revelation of Hashem. It's not just about the unifications. In other words, if a person is just thinking of the unification, he's not thinking that he's causing or creating an instrument through which the infinite can come down into our limited reality. That's a mistake. Still, in kol zeh, כיוון שהמידות הן רק כטיפה מאוקיינוס, ואם כן לכאורה האור אינסוף שבתוכה נמשך על ידי הצמצום הידוע נקרא מקום פנוי, ואם כן עדיין אינו ארוך לגבי האור אינסוף עצמו שבכל מגמתנו וחפצנו ותשוקתנו וכולו. So still, it is only a drop out of the ocean, like we said before. So even if you say that the infinite revelation is within, but this infinite revelation is a drop compared to the infinite itself. So it's a very strange thing to say. On the face of it, what do you mean? Infinite is a drop of infinite is less than the infinite.
I mean,
well, it's pretty good also.
Yeah.
But okay, and so what's going on? But how can you even?
I mean, it's yeah.
But still, so okay, so just dive into the infinite. Why do you need the whole? This is something that's troubling him now.
Oh, I see. In other words, okay.
So there are different. First of all, this is true in Chassidus, and the Tzemach Tzedek was the master of this. The different levels of infinity. He has a book called Sefer Chakira, called Derech Emunah also, and there he discusses long before Cantor. Cantor was a mathematician who pioneered the area of studying the infinite in mathematics. So he has levels of infinity. So I'll give you a small example, a very simple example. He says, if you take all the positive numbers, that's infinity. There's an infinite number, right? And you think that that's as big as it can get. But then he says, okay, so that's one direction, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now let's add negative numbers. So is that a bigger infinity or a smaller infinity? So it turns out that in Cantor's system, these are the same level of infinite, called Aleph Ephes. You called it Aleph because of the word Ein Sof. But there are higher levels of infinity. For instance, these are all what we call real numbers. He says the moment you add to these or you compare, let's say, the rational to the irrational numbers, those are two different levels of infinity, I believe. Or if you compare the real numbers to the transcendental numbers, of which we only know 3, which is a strange thing. We only know 3 transcendental numbers. They're called pi. Pi is well known. And e, which is the natural base of logarithms. And another one, they call it, it's that, I don't remember, it's not eta. I don't remember what it's called, that sign. We only know 3. No, it's a Greek letter. I just don't remember what it's called. It says there's only 3 that we know, but there's infinitely more than there are real numbers. How he does this, why, it doesn't matter. But so he pioneered this area of mathematics. But long before this, the Tzemach Tzedek wrote in his book called Sefer Chakira about different levels of infinity. So this is a glimpse of that. He says the infinite that you get through the unifications, through the yichudim, is after the tzimtzum. It's a lower level of infinity than the infinite itself. So first of all,
is an infinity.
yeah, I said okay, but it's infinite, but it's not the infinite before the contraction.
Yeah.
So now he begins to answer our first question for real. This time he really begins. So what's the point? כי אף על פי שהתעברו את 10 ספירות עצמן ועל ידי הצמצום במקום פנוי ידוע. מכל מקום האור אין סוף המתלבש בתוכן הוא הערה מאור אין סוף ממש, כמו שהוא למעלה מהצמצום. והוא עניין הקו מהאור אין סוף שנמשך אחר הצמצום, וביאור עניין הרשים והקו נתברר במקום אחר. So he says, even though we said that the 10 sfirot, they're all created after the tzimtzum, still, don't imagine for a moment that the infinity goes down a level. It doesn't go down a level. The infinite that comes into the sfirot is the infinite from before the tzimtzum. Okay, so the sfirot are after the tzimtzum, they're after the contraction, and the light that's coming into them, the revelation of God that's coming into them, is from before the contraction. So first of all, it's not a decrease in the level of the infinite, even though it could be, and there are decreases. He says in this case it's not. And the way that this comes down is called the ray of light that comes down from the infinite. It comes in, meaning it transports the infinite down as is, in a certain sense. Okay, we'll see in a moment that ואומנם עניין הייחודים הוא להמשיך הערה חדשה מאור אינסוף ממש בתוספת ולורב לאין קץ על הערה הראשונה ויומשך הערה למטה עד שיהיה ייחוד זון על דרך דוגמה. And he says the purpose of the unifications is to bring down more of that true infinite revelation from before the contraction into our reality. And that's the topic that we discussed already, called shoresh and tosefet, the root and the addition. Every time we pray, we're bringing down more from the infinite that was before the creation. That's what prayer is doing. It's not just taking from after the contraction and working with what there was. It's bringing down again. So what does this mean? It means that in prayer, when we pray, there has to be a point where we're addressing the infinite from before the contraction. Because otherwise, how are we bringing it down? So it must be that somewhere in the davening, we're thinking of the infinite that is before creation. Where do we do this? So now he says, ולהבין ביאור הדברים, הנה יש להקדים עניין הקריאת שמע שלפני 18 מהו. To understand this, where we do this, where do we address the infinite that's before the creation? You have to understand what Kriyas Shema is about. What is the Shema about in the first place? D'hinei, as we said before, Kriyat Shema hi hagdama ל-18. The Kriyas Shema, when you read Shema, it's an introduction, because we do it before the 18. So a lot of people think, okay, so you put the Kriyas Shema somewhere, you have to do it. It's a mitzvah that you're supposed to do it twice a day. You got to put it somewhere. So this whole discussion in brachos, where do you put it? Do you put it in between the Shemona Esrei? Do you put it before the Shemona Esrei? In the end, you see that it's not very clear from that sugya what you need to do. In the end, in the Siddur, they decided to put it before. It seems like they put it in front of the Shemona Esrei because they had to put it somewhere. But there's other opinions that you can put it in between, meaning you could say Shemona Esrei in the morning, then say Kriyas Shema, then say Kriyas Shema in the night, and then say another Shemona Esrei. And that's the opinion, I remember, I think, of Rabbi Yehuda. He says that there's another opinion that says Kriyas Shema has to be next to my bed. I mean, what does that mean, next to my bed? From that we got that we need to say Kriyas Shema again before we go to sleep, even though we said it before Shemona Esrei at night. But it's not clear. But in Kabbalah, it's very clear what this is doing. In Chassidus, it becomes even more clear. Why this is an introduction to Shemona Esrei. כי בשמונה עשרה הכוונה בהמשכת אור אינסוף והספירות ומהם למטה כדי לאל. When we say the Shemona Esrei is all about intentions. There are kavanos. What is the kavana of Kriyas Shema? In Shemona Esrei, I'm doing all the unifications. That's what you do according to Kabbalah. I wanted to bring you a Siddur or a Shash, I forgot. But to see it, what it looks like. When you're saying the Shemona Esrei, you have all these, according to Kabbalah, you have all these unifications in mind. You're performing all these unifications between the Sfirot, between the Partzufim. These are the mechanisms. That's after the tzimtzum. ואומנם בקריאת שמע, בפסוק ראשון שמע ישראל, שהוא הנקרא קבלת עול מלכות שמיים, העניין הוא להמשיך הערה ממקורא דכולה, דהיינו מבחינת עצמות האור אינסוף, כמו שהוא בעצמותו למעלה מהתלבשות הערתו, שבעשר ספירות שמבחינת הערת הקו לבד. But he says, but when we say Kriya Shema, our intent is to bring down revelation. We address the infinite revelation of Hashem before the Tzimtzum. That's the purpose of Kriya Shema. So in Kriya Shema, there's no kavanot. There can't be any. There's only one kavana. It's called, by the sages, they call it Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. They say, the taking on the yoke of heaven. So what do they mean there by that? He says, what they mean is that you're addressing Hashem as it was before even the creation of the world. Meaning that there's no world. Now we begin to understand why we cover our eyes. Because we cover our eyes during Kriya Shema because there's no world. You're not supposed to see the world. You're not supposed to see that there's a creation. You're supposed to address Hashem as He was before the creation. That also means, by the way, we'll get to it, that before I was created. And that's also part of it. Shmoneh Esrei, I can feel myself, I can see the world, I don't have to close my eyes. There's no need to close your eyes in Shmoneh Esrei. In the Amida, you can say, but when you say Kriya Shema, the first verse is addressing Hashem before the creation of the world. So there can be no world.
We have to tell ourselves.
Can, but the bittul here is not just myself; it's everything. As if there was no creation at all, because that's what I'm addressing. I'm addressing Hashem before the creation altogether. So this we'll continue with tomorrow.